Welcome to What a Creep, the show with Margo Donahue and Sonia Mansfield, talking about creeps from the past to the present.
This is your quick guide to the biggest creeps, jerks, assholes, and losers, the best of the worst.
From two nice ladies who want the world to be a little less creepy.
Welcome back to What a Creep. This is Margo Donahue, and my cohort in creepitude, as always, is the sniffly Sonia Mansfield. Hello, my friend with a cold.
Hello, my friend. I apologize, everybody, if my voice sounds a little icky, and if I'm a little sniffly. I've got a cold. At least it's not the bird flu.
It's not that.
Right side.
It's not COVID. So it's just a little cold. She's fine,
It's
everybody.
just a little cold. I'm fine, everyone.
But I am going to be leading today's discussion, and we are the podcast that talks about creeps from the past to the present. Today, we're talking about some creepy stuff that happened with a very popular band, mostly sticking to their road life in the 70s. There's other stuff we could talk about, but we'd be here all day if I had to talk about all the creepy things associated with Led Zeppelin. But if this is your
never
first
heard of them.
And by the way, I'm a huge fan. I'm doing all this from love. This is Margo. I'm leading it this week. This all comes from me, from a place of love. You got any problems, don't bother Sonia. She has nothing to do with this. This is mine. But at the end of the show, Sonia's going to present somebody who is not a creep. And sometimes I know who it is, and sometimes I don't. Today I don't. So it's going to be fun to figure out what it's going to be. It's going to be a surprise. But just so y'all know, we're always looking for suggestions for creeps and also non-creeps. So there's different places you can reach out to us. We have a basic Facebook page. That's where people go to complain about our language. This is your warning. We use salty language in this program. If you have little kids in the car, get them to cover up their ears or knock them out. I don't know. We got some stuff to talk about today.
I'm super fucking sorry about that.
We're on Threads, Instagram, and Blue Sky at What a Creep Podcast. And we have an old-timey email, whatacreeppodcast@gmail.com. If you would like some stickers, I'm supposed to be getting stickers soon from Death by Stickers. But when I get them in, I will send out more. So if you'd like some, please send us your address via that email. And wherever you are on the planet of Earth, I will attempt to get them to you. Warning, you have to give me the right address. I had a couple people give me the wrong address last week.
Oops.
But that's okay. It's no big deal. Sonia, do you want to tell them about their website?
Yeah, go to whatacreeppodcast.com and it's everything you want to know about the podcast, but we're afraid to ask. Click into each of those little blog posts and you'll see our show notes because we source everything we do. We're not making this stuff up. We want to give people credit for the work they do. If you're looking for a deeper dive on any of our creeps, fabulous place to start. You could also go to our merch shop. We have t-shirts and tote bags and face masks and journals and all kinds of awesome stuff. Do it. The shirts are super comfy. Can testify to that.
Yep.
4 stars. Do recommend. There's also a link to our Patreon. You want to tell them about that, Margo?
Yes, Patreon. This is season 28 that we're in right now. We have our first 9 seasons on the Patreon wall.
9?
And we put out 2 bonus episodes a month. That's all for the people who pay for Patreon. So all of you that do that, thank you so much. You can also sign up for free because we're going to make it a little more interactive because if Facebook goes away or whatever, really the world is working right now. We want to have a spot where we can host everybody and hang out. And right now the best place is in the Facebook group, but we're going to try to create that in Patreon as well. So you can also sign up for free and we'll put stuff up there occasionally, some content that's free for you.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there anything else I need to discuss, Sonia? Hi,
I don't think so.
My cat's joining us in a second.
Oh,
She's taking her rightful place.
She loves Led Zeppelin.
She's a huge groupie for Led Zeppelin. She dumped me in a second.
Well, they are pussy magnets.
They are indeed. Pussy magnets. Oh, Sonia.
Mm-hmm.
The reason I want to talk about this is because we talk all the time. We have a discussion. We've been doing the show for about 5 years now. And a continuous discussion that we have is, what do we do about people we cancel when it comes to art? For example, Woody Allen. If you like his movies, but he's a fucking creep.
Yeah.
Like, what do you pay for? What do you not pay for? What do you enjoy, not enjoy? Blah, blah, blah. And Led Zeppelin is a big one. And we'll talk about why there's some weirdness around them. And we say, you can always divide the artist from their actions. It just depends what those actions are. It depends on who they hurt. It depends on if they feel bad about it or not, if they've made any kind of retribution, have they grown? There's all kinds of things that, you kind of have to keep in mind when we decide these things. So Led Zeppelin, we're talking about today, it's like just one of the biggest bands of the 70s. One of my favorite bands because I'm a total rock chick. No apologies there.
Margo is a rock chick, and I'm more of a pop chick.
She's a pop
I
chick.
guess. Yeah, so we differ there. I'm kind of like Led Zeppelin and Rush are none of my business. I know that they are a thing. I can recognize the songs, but they're not my.
You don't turn the radio up really loud when you hear them. That's not your instinct.
No.
Yeah.
No, but I can objectively hear it, see the video and be like, yeah, of course. People, I get it. I just don't get it.
It's also funny because we'll bring this back to Bob Dylan. Sonia saw the Bob Dylan movie a few months ago, and she was like, they're all about this thing about a concert that he has to play. And I'm like, you mean, the jazz festival, the Newport Jazz Festival? And you're like, yeah. I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? So she really is not a rock historian. Nor does she have to be. We're all into our own thing. Yacht rock is your thing.
Totes.
Yeah. So this were Steely Dan or Doobie Brothers. Sonia would be completely...
Yeah, I would have all kinds of thoughts and feelings. This is going to be fun.
This is going to be super fun. And I wanted to talk about it because there's a documentary that's out that's called Becoming Led Zeppelin. I've been seeing clips and they're amazing. And I haven't been in a movie theater since COVID. No, I have not. Seriously, because people annoy me anyway.
I've been there.
Yes. She goes every other week.
Which is why I probably have a cold, everybody.
Could be it. But the documentary is called Becoming Led Zeppelin. It was playing on IMAX theaters. I've been hearing from people it's great. I guess I'm going to wait till it's streaming and I'll see it for myself. But it did make me think about, they do have some creepy stuff around them. And in a lot of the reviews, they're like, it's just about the first few years and it's just about the music. It's nothing attached to it. So I'm like, that's the opportunity for me. I could just talk about the crazy shit attached to it. And I have a feeling you're not going to know some of this stuff, Sonia. So I'm super excited.
I probably won't.
I'm super excited to dive right in. All right, if we're ready to go, are you ready to ramble on, Sonia? You won't even know what that means, do you?
I'm super ready to take the stairway to heaven.
Oh!
Thanks, everybody. That's all I got.
Led Zeppelin is making headlines again with the release of their first official documentary in decades, titled Becoming Led Zeppelin. The film primarily focuses on the band's music and early stages of their career as iconic touring legends. One of us, the one that's speaking right now, is a huge fan and appreciates their remarkable talent, while also acknowledging their complicated history, which includes some unsettling stories. Their life on the road has become a part of groupie lore, passed down for decades, and also stories involving witchcraft and devil worship connected to Jimmy Page. Things I don't really care about. I mean, to me, I think he's a warlock. Like Stevie Nicks is a witch. I'm like, it's not going to hurt me. I'm fine with it.
I'm fine with that.
Everyone's into weird shit. It doesn't, whatever.
Yeah, who cares?
The band officially broke up in 1980 following the death of their drummer, John Bonham, who was 32 when he passed away. I forgot how young he was.
That's young.
They have regrouped in various forms over the years, but the late 60s and 70s Led Zeppelin, with their numerous tales of debauchery, will be the basis of this episode. Let's ramble on, y'all. Trigger warnings. Sexual assault, sexual harassment, grooming, and Margo breaking out in song from time to time. Sources for this episode, The Daily Fail. We say The Daily Fail when we mean The Daily Mail, but that's for our friends who have The Daily Fail podcast. Led Zeppelin, the biography by Bob Spitz, Vanity Fair, Library of America, Ellen Sanders, Shake It Up, Rolling Stone, The Independent, Hammer of the Gods by Stephen Davis. Some of these things I've read, by the way, a while ago, so I didn't read them all this week. I'm With the Band by Pamela DeBars, one of my favorites. Led Zeppelin Wikipedia, The Independent, Far Out Magazine, LedZeppelin.com, their forum, which is an amazing place to hang out.
Ooh.
And the Metro UK for the shark incident. You don't know the shark incident, do you, Sonia?
No.
Oh, it's going to be something. Let me give you just an outline of Led Zeppelin as they stand now. There's 3 members that are living. They're alive, by the way. These guys, what they did to themselves 50 years ago, and they're still walking around playing instruments and fine.
Impressive.
It's very impressive. They have they're made of some stern stuff. These are like the kids
they're
from World War
warlocks.
II Europe. They're warlocks. And they're also like the generation that was right after World War II when, England was bombed to shit. So they're a tough generation. They were a very, stern, tough generation. So we have Jimmy Page, who's 81. His girlfriend's in her 30s, and they've been together for over 10 years. So we'll know what we'll talk about when it comes to him.
Ew.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh, yeah, Sonia. It's not even.
Okay.
Robert Plant, 76. John Paul Jones is 79. And like I said, their drummer passed away. We also have 3 main people we'll be talking about. Peter Grant, who was their manager. A little bit of Richard Cole, who was their tour manager. And a little bit of Bill Graham, who's a Bay Area legend.
Yeah, yes.
Sonia lives in the Bay Area. I used to live there. So let's start in 1968. And Jimmy Page is earlier than 1968. Let's go to 1964. Jimmy Page grew up, Jimmy Page, in his first home that he lived in, the family moved into a home in Surrey, England, when he was 5 years old, and in the house was a guitar. And nobody knew how to play with it, so he just took it for himself. And that's seriously how he became a guitarist. There just happened to be a guitar in the house, and he took to it and taught himself how to play. And
wow.
I know. It's really, really impressive. And he did have some lessons here and there, but he became obsessed with blues music. That was his favorite. And Atlantic Records and their blues acts were like his jam. That was what he listened to. And he became a studio musician. And he was on all the cool shit from like the Swinging Londons. It's like Swinging London. So Sunshine Superman by Donovan, he's on that. Goldfinger, Shirley Bassey. That's Jimmy Page's on Finger. Heart of Stone, Rolling Stones, Tobacco Road, the Nashville Teens, Baby Please Don't Go by them. He's on that. And Downtown by Petula Clark.
Oh, Downtown.
So Jimmy was on a lot of cool records, and he played lead guitar. The bassist was John Paul Jones. John Paul Jones was a studio musician as well. Not quite as successful as Jimmy, or bass players really don't get a lot of fame. It's, it tends to be the lead guitarist that gets the most attention and the singer. That's usually how it goes. But he's in the group called the Yardbirds, and then the Yardbirds sometimes have Eric Clapton, sometimes they have Jeff Beck. They're kind of always moving around in their group. And he wants to start anew, and he wants to build a new group together based with 4 lads, as he put it, 4 lads, white lads, that want to play music, this kind of blues music, but kind of make it a new thing, like take it to the next level, make it more current. So John Paul Jones, he's been married since 1967 to the same wife, by the way.
Oh.
His wife is kind of annoyed because he's not working lately and he's home a lot. And so she's like, why don't you call Jimmy Page? Because he's always doing something. So he calls Jimmy.
Get out of here.
Get out of the house. I got shit to do. You're in my way.
You're in my way.
Stop watching TV and just go someplace. And so he calls Jimmy Page, and Jimmy Page just says, oh, this is funny. I got this opportunity, and it's going to be called the New Yardbirds, and I want to put a band together. You want to join us? And he's like, okay. And then he starts asking around about a singer and a drummer. And somebody mentions a kid named Robert Plant, who was 20 years old when they found him. And
a little babe.
He's a babe, and he was a babe. And John Bonham, who's the same age, they're 20 years old. Both of them are married. John Bonham has a kid already. He got married at like 17. He married his sweetheart. Like they met like 2 years before. And he was working in construction and then playing drums on the weekends with bands. And he said he just liked the English life, and he wished he had a life where all he had to do was play drums on the weekend for a living and then just be with his family. And I'm like, same. Can we all just find a reason? I would love to. But he managed to make this happen. So the 4 of them get together in a studio, and the first song they'd come up with, let's play Train Kept A-Rollin', which is like this old-timey blues number. The Yardbirds put it out. Aerosmith put out a version. It's like just one of those standards. And apparently they were so good, like everybody in the studio, everybody throughout the building was like showing up like, what the hell is going on here? And a man named Peter Grant signs them as a manager. He figures out right away. Jimmy Page is already a star. John Paul Jones is known in the media, but he could tell Robert Plant was special. And Bonzo is what they call Bonham on drums, was like, I don't know if you ever listened to drumming in Led Zeppelin. He's considered one of the best drummers of all time, if not the best of all time. So when the four of them get together, it is super exciting to watch the four of them together when it's in the pocket, when they're just grooving and they're on stage.
Yeah.
You're just like, there's nobody better than that. So Peter Grant is a guy who works in show business. He's 6'5". He's over 300 pounds. He was an actor for a little while. He was also a wrestler for a little while. And then he decided...
Very surprised he doesn't go by Tiny.
No, that would have been hilarious. Pee-wee.
Usually they go by Tiny or Pee-wee.
Yeah. Shorty.
Yep.
Something clever. No. He's just Peter. They call him G for his last name.
All right.
So it's 1968. Once again, they're kids, they're babies, the little saplings, and they get a record deal with Atlantic Records. And Peter Grant is known for being a very tough bully negotiator. He gets them a $200,000 deal. That's $2 million in today's money.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nobody got a deal like that then. Nobody. That was like the Stones. Nobody else would get a deal like that. They also got to sign with Atlantic Records, which is what they really wanted. Because Atlantic, most record labels have different subdivisions and they'll put bands in different subdivisions because they think they'll make it more successful. And so Atlantic, for their blues stuff, was just all black acts. That's all that was, just strict blues. Rock, pop, everything else went in a different category. And Led Zeppelin said, absolutely not. We have to be Atlantic. That's it. And then they said, okay, but then you need to put yourselves on the cover of the album because everybody has to see how gorgeous you all are. And they said, no, we're not doing that. We're not spending a lot of money on photos. We're not even going to name the album. We're just going to put our name on it. And by the way, the name came because of Keith Moon, who saw them play and says, oh, y'all are going, you all, he doesn't say y'all, excuse me. You all are going over like a lead balloon or Led Zeppelin. That's my Keith Moon for everybody. So Keith Moon gives them the name of Led Zeppelin, and they have this really cool logo of the blimp like falling apart and all that shit.
Yes.
And so they don't have to put their names on the album. They don't have to, they can play on Atlantic Records. The studio can give them no notes.
I was just going to say, they got a lot of leeway.
So much leeway. And a lot of this is because of Jimmy Page, because he was very famous as a session musician. But as I said, he was on like 20 records that I could name that you would know.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't know it right away. But if I told you, you'd be like, oh, I know that song. Everybody knew him. And he's tall, very handsome. They're the first rock label on there. And that, once again, they complete artistic control. And so in 1969, they start going out on tour. In 1969, they put out 2 albums. This is just how much
this never happens anymore.
Never. And they don't have to put out video. I mean, it's all just very different. And they immediately become a favorite of audiences. They're just really, really, really good live. And they play hard, they play long, and the audience totally loves them. And they could do like 3-hour shows and just wear people out. So they're starting to tour America. And as they're touring and their pictures are getting out there and people are hearing about them, the women show up because they're all really hot.
They are. They're
very handsome. So we have different kinds of groupies, and groupies sort of started in the mid-'60s. And the Rolling Stones are supposedly one of the first to call them groupies rather than muses or anything. And groupies are just, women that follow bands around and will give a blowjob for whoever needs one in order to get a backstage pass. I mean, there's all kinds of... They say things like, oh, we're there for a muse. We give them company. We watch their tea. I'm like, you're there to fuck them and to be their comfort girl.
Yeah, well, there's a little
when
bit
they don't
of,
have their wives around. I mean, come on.
Yeah. You watch something like Almost Famous. And
yes. Oh, my God.
Kate Hudson is very much of the and all of the groupies in that movie are portrayed as muses, and we're very respectful, and we're here, blah blah blah, and we don't eat first, we let them eat at the at the catering and all that stuff. But yeah, it's also you just want to fuck the band.
It's a transaction.
Okay. By the way, that's fine.
It is
It's fine if
it's the epitome of a transactional relationship. I
Yeah.
really admire you, so I'm just going to be whatever you want me to be to make you happy so I can hang around you. And maybe we'll have sex. Maybe you'll write a song about me one day.
Yeah.
Which is
Also,
fine, by the
like,
way. I'm not
fine.
judging.
If you want to,
If that's what everybody
go
wants,
for it.
everyone's on board with that.
Consenting adults?
Yes, consenting adults. Let's keep that in there. Adults.
Knock yourself out. Knock yourself out. And also, like, if you want to, like, put it in terms of nature, like, animals would do this, like, they put on a show to, like, attract a mate, you know, like
Yeah,
peacocks
peacocking.
and bird. Yeah, all that stuff. Rock stars are kind of peacocking, and, like, that shit works. It's almost like biological. We almost can't help ourselves.
It's very difficult to resist a Robert Plant.
Yes.
You know, a long-haired, blonde, you know, golden god, you know, shirt open,
Yeah.
slim, sexy.
Yeah.
He would wear his girlfriends. He had groupies in every city, and he would wear their shirts on stage. So that became a thing. Like, you get not only get Robert Plant, but get him to wear your shirt on stage. And he would wear like a blouse, like a chick's blouse.
Yes.
But he would wear it open, you know, with no t-shirt underneath, like it'd be bare chested. So it's just kind of like that gender bending kind of like, ooh.
Yeah. Also, we're not immune. Margo and I joke all the time about Bloody Blah could have all of this.
Yes.
They could.
They could, absolutely.
We're not even like,
I'm not joking. You put me in a time machine and I'm going to see Zeppelin in like 1969 at a show. I'm going to be excited. I'm going to like, okay, let's check this out. So there were different kinds of groupies there. There were the GTOs, Girls Together Outrageously, which are part of Frank Zappa's crew. There was the Butter Queen, which was a woman named Barbara who used butter in her sex acts and apparently was the best at it. Hey-oh. There was
can't believe it's not butter.
It's chiffon. There's Sweet Connie, who was a woman who lived in the South, who was a very famous backstage groupie. Everybody wrote about her. She passed away a few years ago, and she was actually really delightful. Like Pamela DeBar would interview her, and everybody else would be like, "Well, you know, you think about it, and what was my self-esteem like, and what was I needing when I was going through this stage of my life?" And Connie was like, "I like dick, and I like rock stars, so that's what I did."
She's just sitting there going, "Dick, dick, 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 dick."
She was a substitute teacher because she didn't want a full-time job. She wanted to work when she wanted to work, and she wanted to go on the road when she wanted to go on the road. God bless Connie. You know, live life to your fullest. Consenting adults.
Again, consenting adults.
No judgment. There was the Cynthia Plastercasters. Do you know this?
Mm-mm.
Oh, boy. So it was it was like 2 or 3 women. And what they would do, Sonia, is they would get backstage with rock stars. And one of them would give a hand job or a blow job. And then when the penis was erect, they would put plaster. They would stick their dicks in plaster of Paris. So their junk, their dicks, became the art. And people would be around watching it. It wasn't like that private. Jimi Hendrix had this done. Zeppelin had this done. Like Cynthia Plastercaster was everybody's thing.
They're artistes.
They're artistes. It was art. I mean, it's weird, but I get it. Like look, you have to have something that makes you stand out. Guess what?
Thing.
If you give me your dick, I will make art out of it. What do you say? And then we have what's a thing called, which became very popular, especially in LA, the baby groupie. And it's as gross as it sounds. It's very, very young women. The drinking age in America at the time was at the average, you know, state to state, it's different. But it used to be 18. That was pretty much the standard. Maybe 19 in places that were a little nervous about high school kids getting drunk. But it was very easy to get into clubs. If you were just halfway good looking and hot, you could get into a club. And there are young girls that what young girls do when they're 12 or 13, they want to be 16 or 17. So they wear lots of makeup, they wear sexy clothes. Mm-hmm. And a lot of these kids were doing that in LA. And they're going to places like Rodney Bingenheimer's discotheque, which we'll talk about him one day. There's the Troubadour. There's all these places, like especially in LA. I mean, in every city you had your groupies. But LA apparently had the baby groupies that everyone was really psyched about. I know. And I want to keep in mind, everybody, I was watching Kendrick Lamar again today.
course you
Jimmy
were.
Page's favorite key was A minor. Because that was his thing. We'll get into it. Okay. Sonia, I forgot something very important.
Another shark story.
Okay. So, y'all, I'm putting this in the middle of the show. Sonia and I already recorded the show, and you're going to hear the rest of it. But there's something really important that I didn't get to. And it's because I forgot that page. Not Jimmy Page, but a different page in my script. So we're going to do this really quick, really now. Because I know if I don't include the Sonia, everybody that knows Led Zeppelin's going to think I'm a huge fucking asshole.
Okay.
I've got to get this correct.
All right.
Sonia, when we were talking about baby groupies in L.A.,
Yes.
Jimmy Page liked them young. He liked A minor. So did Iggy Pop. So did a lot of rock stars. Mick Jagger, Rod Stewart, Alice Cooper. And there was two of them that I want to tell you about. One of them is Sable Starr, and one of them is Lori Lightning. I'm not sure what Sable's real name is, but she was a little bit older than, they're like 12, 13 years old when they meet, and they're going to the clubs.
Okay.
And Lori Maddox is her name, and they're spelling her name incorrectly here. It's Mattix. Anyway, Lori was 12, and Starr said she was 12 when she lost her virginity to the band Spirit, the guitarist Randy California.
Ew.
Yeah.
12. So young.
And then when she, after that, her next boyfriend was Iggy Pop. And he actually wrote in one of his songs, he wrote, "I slept with Sable when she was 13. Her parents were too rich to do anything. She rocked her way around L.A. till a New York doll carried her away." She was considered one of the big groupies of the time, and so she brought Lori Maddox with her. Lori, when she was 14, said that she lost her virginity to David Bowie. Bowie slept with a child in the early 70s. Yes.
Okay.
I listen to Bowie every day, too.
Look, and I know people are going to be like, well, that's just how it was back then. That doesn't mean it's right.
It doesn't make it right, but it just tells you like how messed up we were about like these things. So Lori hung out with Sable, and she hung out with the other groupies, including Mackenzie Phillips, like hung around this crew. Mm-hmm. So Lori's about 15 when she meets Jimmy Page. And she meets him at one of Ronnie Bingheimer's club, and he's completely smitten with her. And she's really pretty. You know, she's just tawny skin and big brown eyes and just like the whole shebang. She's also a kid.
Yeah.
So she sleeps with him, with Jimmy Page, and they hang out. And then she's got to go back. She's got like a social study homework or something like that to take care.
Yeah, she's like, got to go back to school.
So she goes back home, and then Jimmy's going on tour, and she's underage, and you're not allowed to take people underage, but he did anyway. He got so close to her. He got close to her mother. He used to send her mother gifts with flowers and things like that.
Very common. It's called grooming.
So Jimmy was with Lori Maddox when she was 15 years old. They hung out a couple of times, and then one time in particular in L.A., she was home, and she was either grounded or she wasn't allowed out. So he sent Peter Grant, who sent a bodyguard over to kidnap Lori.
Jesus.
Took her from her home, took her back to Jimmy's hotel room, and then he hung out with her.
Yeah.
What
the fuck?
She lost Jimmy to BB Buell, who is Liv Tyler's mother. And Liv Tyler's father is Steven Tyler. She thought her father was Todd Rundgren. He actually said he was her father, but he wasn't. It was Steven Tyler. But BB Buell was an old 21-year-old when she met
She's
Jimmy.
All washed up.
Exactly. So BB and Lori were hanging out, and then it became pretty apparent, like, we can't fly her everywhere because of the Mann Act. We can't take a child across the border. So then that's when Jimmy was like, okay, well, maybe we have some older ones that we could travel with. So then Jimmy kind of traded her out for BB Buell.
That's
and
so
she
icky.
and he broke up with her. He just dumped her and then took on with BB Buell. Years later, they became friends again. She's had an on and off relationship with this story, with this narrative.
Yeah.
Sometimes she's, says like, yeah, I was too young. I look at pictures of myself. I don't know, and then she's like, but she says she doesn't regret it.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't.
It's so interesting because we're at this weird place in, I want to say society, but it feels more like America to say, like, where it's like, we must protect our girls from blank, right? Trans people or
Right.
things like that. But at the same time, there's this like fetishizing of younger girls, and also when someone who is underage, say, hooks up with, I don't know, Matt Gaetz or something, all of a sudden we don't need to protect our girls and they are old enough to know better.
Yep. You reap what you sow.
Yes. So what is it? Are they underage and they need our protection, or are they old enough to know better? Or, old enough.
Well, think about what's happening just recently in this country. We elected a sexual assaulter to be our president, and then he brought Andrew Tate over and his loser friends. And that guy, like, he's in America right now. He should not be. He should be in a Romanian prison. That's where he belongs.
Yep.
But we don't really care. We don't really care.
No, they don't. There's a lot of crazy loons in MAGA that'll be like, Trump is all about stopping sexual traffickers and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, he is one.
He is one, and he just brought in one. So, and everybody he hires is fucked up. So, spare me.
So there's a lot of very different takes on when girls, I should say, need our protection and when they don't. And it's pretty interesting to see that it hasn't changed much since the 70s. Apparently.
No, and it's Pamela DeBar's every once in a while she often, because she was a big time groupie and she wrote books about it, and really fun books. Like, she's a really smart, funny chick and has a decent perspective. But she lost, like she was considered old. She was with Jimmy Page before Lori was, but she was like a 19, 20-year-old, and he wasn't into that anymore. He wanted younger.
God, so icky.
And
I don't get it. I just don't get it.
And there was a magazine called Star Magazine before there was a Star Magazine. And the Star Magazine that was out of LA, it was like a fanzine, but it was like all about young groupies.
Yep.
So it was like a thing. And also I should mention there's a thing called the Hyatt House in LA, and they mention it in the Cameron Crowe movie.
Almost Famous.
Almost Famous. The Riot House. That's the Hyatt House in LA, and that's where everybody would go. And that's the whole thing. But she fell in love with him. She says no, that she doesn't regret it, and I completely understand. Like, and Star also, she was interviewed before she passed away when she was 51 at brain cancer. They had asked her, "Do you regret what happened?" And she said, "No, it was I loved him. It was great." I don't know. Everyone's on their own journey, their own path. I think it's okay to say it's wrong that they did that. I see it's wrong. I don't like it, but I can't tell you how you should feel about your experience.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, she has a right to feel about it however she wants to feel about it. It was illegal. Mm-hmm. It is illegal. It could be, this is the story she has to tell herself to be okay. And that's okay too. Or maybe she really is like,
or maybe she did love him and she's fine with it. And she knows I'm too young and it doesn't make sense, but that's how I really feel. Like deep down, that's how I feel, and that's how I'm going to live. Yeah. I can't tell her to feel differently.
Yeah, correct.
So
you feel how you feel.
You feel how you feel, but this shit was wrong. But that's like, it was also very much a part of the culture.
Yep.
We will now continue back to the show. Thank you. So 1969, they come out, they have 2 albums, and they're going on a world tour. And the first thing I want to talk about is, well, let me talk about this first. I'm talking about a lot of things first, but I want to talk about their reputation. Led Zeppelin was never the critics were never kind to Led Zeppelin. The critics thought that they were just sort of a Rolling Stones knockoff. that
Mhm.
all they're doing is playing music from Black musicians and then putting their own twist on it. It's not original. It's very snooty because they're just
Right.
about, let me be very clear, they're about fucking. These are not about men that are talking about making love. They're not talking about anti-war. They're not talking about the human condition. They're not talking about, oh, I love somebody and I lost them. They're talking about out fucking. That's what they care about. That's what they're
That's
into,
great.
which is fine by me. But
Yeah.
it's part of the reason why, because they didn't have these didn't appear to have loftier goals. They eventually did, of course. They expanded their work, but critics were not very kind to them. So the first reporters that were allowed to hang out with them tended to be women reporters because they got it. They were like, boom, this is my thing.
Well, maybe this is another example of how things that women enjoy are dismissed, right?
Yes.
That's not serious art if only women like it.
Right.
It's like not people always forget like the Beatles were a boy band.
Yep.
Like they were insanely popular with teenage girls. And, later as they grew up and their music changed, now like every like, douchey bros, like I'm super into the Beatles, whatever. But like girls were there first.
The girls were there first. They discovered them. They had their own groupies, by the way. Now, Sonia, have you ever been to Seattle?
Yeah, a long time ago, but yeah, I've been there.
I was there too. And there's a hotel there called Edgewater, and it's on the edge of the water. And I was there once for a business trip and not even realizing where I was until I struck up a conversation with the bartender there. What are you talking about, Margo? Oh, let me start. So, as the legend goes, Sonia, the band played the Seattle Pop Festival July 27th, 1969. It's just a few months after the debut album. They're hugely famous right away. Like rock stations loved them right away. And so then with their manager, Richard Cole, they're going to the Edgewater Inn. And the thing about the Edgewater Inn is it sits atop the Puget Sound. And at the
Okay.
time, I don't know if I didn't look this up, sorry. But at the time, it was known for you could fish outside your window and catch fish and either throw them back or you can go downstairs, have them cook it for you. But
Yeah.
it was just a thing to. And so the band heard about this and being sickos, they it was Bonzo and a couple other people, Richard Cole, there was some other people, but they're fishing. And then they're getting a
Okay.
big shark. And it's not like a land shark like in there, but it's like a muddy shark. There's like it's this
Okay.
and it's like it's a mud shark. It's only like 2 feet long. But they're like, what do we do with this mud shark? And there's a really young girl, we don't know how old, but young, who wants to hang out with the band. And she's kind of bopping around the rooms. And the Vanilla Fudge is staying there as well. And Carmine Apiece, I think he say his last name. He's with the band. He remembers this clearly. But they're walking around, they're fishing, and they're collecting these fish, and they get this big mud shark. And as they're doing this, these men drank constantly. Like the time they woke up till they fell asleep, they were drinking. So they're doing this and they're getting drunker and drunker. And then somebody had an 8mm movie camera and said, we need to make movies. And the whole thing was we were going to make movies of groupies so then we could play them at parties. Really gross. But they're all in on it.
Yeah.
They all know about it. Like, you can't hide the camera. It's right there. So someone says, hey, let's make a movie out of this. And one girl, very young girl who is a redhead and very, very cute, she kind of jumps in the middle is like, what do you want to do with me? You could do anything you want with me. So the rumor is that they tied her, they had her take her clothes off, which she was fine with, and they tied her to the bed. And then they took the shark and basically whacked the shark on her body and maybe put stuff inside her body. There's different tales. Right. Yeah. So this story about a woman fucking a mud shark because the band put it there. She wasn't. I mean, she was tied down. Now, was she in on it or not in on it? Who knows? She apparently identified herself This story comes out in the 80s because there's a Zeppelin book that comes out called Stairway to Heaven Uncensored. That's one of the, I'm sorry, there's one of the many Led Zeppelin books, but the story comes out in the 80s where there was this woman and they took this mud shark and they put it inside this woman and they hit her with the shark and they I would say humiliated her, but maybe to them this is all fun.
Yeah.
But everyone's just fucked up out of their minds. Carmine Appice wrote, each time the shark hit the girl, its teeth ripped her skin and left little tiny blood red scars all over her back. He claims she was bucking and screaming with pleasure throughout the ordeal.
I don't. I have never heard this story. This is fucking bonkers.
It's bonkers, yeah. So people talk about the mud shark or they talk about Seattle and fishing and Zeppelin. That's what they're talking about. It's this particular story. Is it legend or did it really happen?
It's icky.
It's icky. I guess I should have put bestiality in there.
I'm all that. First of all, that poor girl.
Yeah. Well,
again, we could say that she jumped out and was like, do whatever, but also probably underage, which means she can't really
she's just out of her mind. She could be, she could be high. She could have snorted something,
all those
dropped
things.
something, drank something. I mean, people are saying, and people walked in and out of the room when this was happening.
Yeah.
So a lot of people said the girl was so into it. She loved it. And one of these books, they said this woman got in touch with them, through Facebook. Anybody can get in touch with you for Facebook and say, guess what? That was me. I mean, it's just a story, a legendary story that's around them. But
also, this shark didn't sign up for that.
No, the land shark didn't sign up for that. And it's one of those, it's one of those things that people ding against Led Zeppelin. They're
right.
so gross that they would tie a girl to her bed and whack a shark on her body for shits and giggles.
I don't this.
Yeah.
Well, that's just going to sit in my brain all day.
Sorry.
That's okay. Damn.
Yeah, that's in 69.
All right.
They have 2 albums that come out, and then they have 3, then they have 4, and they're coming out just about every year, if not every other year. And every time the band tours, it's bigger and bigger and bigger. They do 5 nights at the Garden. They can't just be in town for one night. They have to be there for several nights. And Peter Grant is working on their deals. And let me go back to a story about Aretha Franklin that I heard when she passed away. Aretha, whenever she was on stage, especially later in her life, you could see stuff. When she's playing on the piano, you could see a bag that's either on the piano on top or right next to her on her seat, her piano bench. That was her money. Aretha Franklin demanded you give her money in cash, not a check, cash. In a bag,
I want to
in a
see
parcel.
it, and I want it right now.
And people do that because they get screwed over.
Yes.
Someone screws you over once, and it takes forever to get your money back. Once you've done a thing and they owe you money, it takes forever to get that money back. So that's why she did that. And Peter Grant is now in charge of Zeppelin, and all these years they're on the road. So many people show up for their shows. They have so many shows that their money that they're getting is just higher and higher and higher. And he's demanding that they pay him ahead of time. And so they have a safe at the hotel, the Drake Hotel in New York. And they were having 3 nights at the Garden, and they were filming a concert film called The Song Remains the Same. And my favorite note is that the people that put it together didn't know what they were doing. And they didn't know that they didn't think of the fact that they were going to record all 3 nights and then put out one movie and to make it look like it's one long concert.
Mm-hmm.
Well, nobody told John Paul Jones or any of them that maybe you should wear the same outfit every night so that we have some continuity. So he's wearing something different all the time. They're all wearing something different. But anyway, it's a big deal. They're filming a movie. They're at the Garden, and they get their cash ahead of time, which is about $200,000, which is almost $2 million in today's money. This is 1973, and they have their passports and their jewelry, and it's in a safe. And then their manager, their road manager, Richard Cole, went to check the safe deposit box just before they're about to go on stage, and he found that it was completely empty except for the 5 passports. So Peter Grant puts together an emergency meeting, and he has everybody together. He calls the cops. They have all these people over. They're late going on stage because he's like, you're not going on stage so we know where this money is. And essentially, they never found the money. But also the detectives thought, who would know where this was and who would know to take it? Who would have access and who would know? So the police have always felt like it was probably
inside job.
Inside job. It might have been a drug dealer that like got the key or something, but after that, I mean, Richard, you have Grant and you have Cole were just like were furious. So then after that, they had to be even more strict. But it was a big deal at the time. So
maybe they had to pay off a loan shark.
Paying off a minor. There was a reporter named Ellen Sanders, and Ellen was a very cool chick from Forest Hills, Queens. She got into rock the first time she heard Mr. Tambourine Man, and she always wanted to be a writer. So she's one of the few women that were rock reporters because, men have to take over everything. And so she convinces the Life magazine, which was a huge magazine at the time, she would hang out with Led Zeppelin for a tour for a few dates and then write her big story about them. So Ellen gets to know them all. And these are the rules that reporters had to follow if you were going to interview Zeppelin. They had these rules. Never talk to anyone in the band unless they first talk to you. Do not make any sort of eye contact with John Bonham. This is for your safety. Bonham, he was such a heavy drinker. And he was one of those, when he got drunk, he got mean. And he would start fights with people.
This is like how you talk about wild animals. Don't make eye contact.
That's what somebody wrote. They're like, am I dealing with a boar? Like, what is going on here?
Yeah.
But they're like, they'll lose their mind. I mean, he would get into fights with people. He would punch somebody as soon as look at them when he was drunk. He was not a nice drunk. He was a really, really bad drunk. Do not ever talk to Peter Gramp or Richard Cole for any reason. Keep your cassette player turned off at all times unless you're conducting an interview. Never ask questions about anything other than music. And most importantly, the band will read what is written about them. The band does not like the press, nor do they trust them. So if you write something they don't like, you're going to be in trouble.
Okay, so a real news organization doesn't let people read things before they are published. Or they say they want to read them before they are published?
No, they're saying they don't expect that, but they said the band will read what is written about them. So basically...
Oh, and you will lose access.
You will lose access in the future, or your publication will. Everybody from Rolling Stone will be allowed or whatever.
Yeah.
So that's why, so she agreed to this, but she also said, I'm just going to hang out. So I don't know what I'm going to do, who I'm going to talk to. I'm just going to let it happen. And she became friendly with them, all of them. And she wrote all these she loved their shows. She was like totally into Zeppelin and got along with all of them. And she was with them for a few months and they all knew her and they knew her story and they all liked her. And then one night she was leaving and it was at the Garden and she was leaving to go home. And it was going to be her last time seeing them. And so she went around to say, hey, I'll let you know when the article comes out. Thank you so much. And she was getting nice hugs and stuff. And then she goes backstage and it's Bonzo and the band and some crew members. And she walks up to Bonzo and says, hey, I'm going. Nice, have a good show. I'm sure we'll see each other soon. And Bonzo started grabbing at her, like for a hug to pull her. And she could just tell he's fucking wasted and he's not the John Bonham I know. He's Bonzo right now. He's not John.
Right.
So she tried to wheel away from him and it made him mad. So him and a crew member both started grabbing at her. And she was wearing a wrap dress and the tie was in the back. So they were grabbing her from the front and that's when they realized she was at the back. So one of them grabbed her arms and the other one whipped her around and they undid her rope, the wrap dress. The wrap dress. And she starts screaming. And she said this all happened in 20 seconds. If that.
Oh my God.
It's like an earthquake thing. Like it happens.
Yeah.
And you think it happened for like a minute. It was like 10 seconds. It was one of those moments. And she said, and then she's like, and one of them put his hand over her mouth. So she was really like freaking out.
Oh my God, that's really scary.
And Peter Grant saw this. And let's again, 6'5", 300 pounds, a former wrestler. He went over and literally grabbed them both by the scruff of their necks and pulled them off of her.
Oh my God.
And then put his...
They are like animals.
They were like animals. And he put his coat around her shoulders and he said, I'll put you in my limo. We'll take you home. So she gets into the limo and she gets home and she immediately starts crying and takes a shower and is like completely upset, like anybody would be, because it's, you know.
That's really, really scary.
It's very scary. And this is the thing, like, why do women choose the bear? Because even if you know somebody well and you think they know you and see you as a human being, things can go pear-shaped any second.
Yep.
And you just have to hope that somebody there will do the right thing. But Jimmy Page didn't do anything. Robert Plant didn't do anything. John Paul Jones just looked away. John Paul Jones apparently wasn't into any of the shenanigans. Like he was never invited to do stuff. Like, so anyway.
He wasn't interested in stopping it either.
No. And she was really upset. So she wound up not writing about them. And then for many, many years, people were talking about this incident. Like, what happened to this woman that was almost raped backstage at a Zeppelin show? And then many years later, she told her story. And she said, I'm at the point now where I could talk about it. But she says for a good year, I couldn't even talk about it because it was just so upsetting. And her editor at Life magazine was very understanding because they wanted to do a story about that. And she was like, no.
Yeah.
We're not doing that. This is like 1971 or 2. Nobody's going to listen to me.
Well, she's not wrong. I mean, look what's still happening to people that come forward. Like, if she wants to keep working, she probably doesn't want to say anything because then
they're not going to give her access. Right? Yeah. They're not going to let her. You're going to accuse us of something.
Yeah.
And so it hurt. I mean,
I might say the wrong thing, and next thing you know,
right?
Like, yeah. So it probably didn't feel safe.
It didn't. And she wanted to still do this for a living. Like, she still wanted to go to shows. This was her passion.
Yeah.
So she wound up talking about it many years later, and she said it was Bonzo and another guy, and Peter Grant saved them. And she just said that when he was drunk, he was not likable. He was not a nice person.
Mm-hmm.
He also, at this point, his drinking was so bad that, you know, they have like the drunk, the alcoholic shits, that's called. My brother used to call it, where when you drink a lot of alcohol, you will poo all the time because your colon is a mess. Yeah, they had to keep, like, they had to have him near the bathroom on all the buses, on all the planes, on everything, because he could have to go in a second. Also, the shows were now on and off. They were either amazing or they were terrible, depending on the mood. And one thing that I love is that I don't know if you're familiar with this, but there's a song, it's a drum solo called, I'm blanking on the name, sorry. But Bonzo had a 20-minute drum solo in the show. Moby Dick.
Okay.
I saw Spinal Tap a long time ago, but Spinal Tap was doing a show and they actually had a segment where everybody was doing, you know, their solo for a bit. And the drum solo went on forever and it was ridiculously bad. But on the Spinal Tap show, they had screens up top the stage and it made them look like they went back. The other guys went backstage. They made tea. They were painting. They were like doing all these things with this guys. That's the same with him. So that was a part of the show. During the mid-70s, Jimmy Page began his big fascination with Aleister Crowley, who is a devil worshiper. I think he was the person who started the Church of Satan. He's considered...
Okay.
Jimmy moved into his former house. Jimmy bought every book he could find. Jimmy was constantly trying to create spells to get people. Jimmy got really into S&M, sex. Like he got
really into M&Ms. Like Jane Fonda.
Like a bowl of M&Ms. We're all going to have sex in this bowl of M&Ms.
Like, look, if I want to have sex with my boss or do M&Ms, that is my business.
I give consent for that.
M&Ms.
And it's the 70s. We've talked about this before. There's a lot of like supernatural things in the news about UFOs and Bigfoot sightings. So the Church of Satanism doesn't scare me like it does for some people. But there's this whole idea of Jimmy Page got way into this Aleister Crowley thing. And then the rumor became Jimmy Page made a deal with the devil in order to be as successful as he was. Because he was always successful.
Yes.
He, like from the time he was like 18.
Same thing about Stevie Nicks.
Yes, same with the Stevie Nicks, same thing. that
she made a deal with a witch, and that's why she sounds the way she sounds, and all this,
and all the music they could put out and all the other stuff that they could put out. But for him, I mean, Zeppelin always had, it's part of their allure, and part of the thing was their dangerous quality. And that was just one aspect of it with Jimmy Page. He was this amazing guitarist, but he was also, liked the baby groupies, and he was also really into S&M and Satanism and Aleister Crowley. So he was a very dark person, and he was probably, things were going to end badly for them because of his, hobbies, let's just say. Between 75 and 77, the band wasn't touring because Robert Plant and his wife Maureen and their 2 kids were in a car accident in Greece. Really bad accident. And so it took them forever to recover. Also, Plant would pick up occasionally bouts of laryngitis. Like just before they were going to go on tour, he would get laryngitis and they have to cancel all these shows. So once again, people were just
bad devil.
The devil was happening. It was there. They made this deal with the devil.
Yep.
This is why it happens. So 1977 finally comes around. So the band hasn't been in America in 2 years. And America loved Led Zeppelin, like wherever they were. So they go on this concert tour, 1977. And they sell out the Silver Dome, 76,000 people. They're in the Guinness World Book of Records for a while for the largest attendance to date for a single act show. Also, at a show in Cincinnati, which also had The Who had a thing go on. We might talk about that one day.
Mm-hmm.
But April 19th, there were over 70 people were arrested and 1,000 fans tried to gate crash Cincinnati's Riverfront Coliseum for 2 concerts. They were throwing rocks and bottles at the doors to get in. Like, people wanted to get to this show. And so
Yep.
So this is happening in like their tour. They're coming back. Once again, some shows are great. Some shows are not so great. And sometimes they're really late. Sometimes Jimmy's drunk. Sometimes Bonzo is drunk. Sometimes Robert loses his voice. John Paul Jones, nobody knows about him. He's a good guitarist, but he's not like, by the way, is just hilarious. His whole thing was, he was fine talking to reporters. They never really want to talk to him because he's not really all that exciting. He's a nice person.
He's like, I'll talk to you guys.
Yeah, he's like, please.
Hey.
He's not into devil worship. He's happily married. He doesn't partake with jewelry with the groupies. Yeah, so he would actually walk in and out of the hotel. Like all the rest of them had to have bodyguards and they had to have dupes and people like, that's Jimmy Page over there. And actually, he's over here. And like John Paul Jones could walk in anywhere. He could walk through the front door at Madison Square Garden. Not one person would recognize him. And even if they did, they wouldn't do anything. He's just...
Did he hate that? Or did
no, he loved
that?
it. He loved it.
Okay.
He's making millions in a band. He has to work a few months out of the year. He's playing music, which he loves to do. And then he's with his family and he's super rich when he's home. He's got a lot of money. He can spend it on anything.
Yep.
I think that's a great life to me. That sounds perfect to me. So let's go to the Day on the Green. And this is a concert that happened in Oakland presented by Bill Graham. Bill Graham Presents. Bill Graham was born in 1939. He was the guy in San Francisco for rock clubs, for rock promotion. Yes. Bill Graham Presents was a thing forever in the Bay Area.
We still have a Bill Graham Civic Auditorium here in San Francisco.
He died in 91 after seeing a Huey Lewis concert. He was flying home from Concord Pavilion in a helicopter, and it hit some wires.
Now known as the Sleep Train Pavilion.
No.
Whoop, whoop.
I hated that they do that.
I know.
I really hate that. I mean, I understand why brands do it, but it's just...
I live real close. I grew up real close to the Concord Pavilion.
I saw a lot of shows there.
Yeah. It's decent. It's a decent venue.
Yeah. I mean, your last concert in your life, you're going to get killed. Really, Huey Lewis? I mean, Led Zeppelin, I get. You died for Huey Lewis? I mean, I like Huey.
Was it a helicopter crash?
It was a helicopter. Yeah, and it was through these power lines. They used to have power lines everywhere. It's tragic. He was a bigger than life personality. He had lost his entire family to the Nazis. He was a Jewish kid. He comes to America an orphan and was adopted and raised in the Bay Area. And he's a rock promoter in San Francisco. He knew everybody. Janis Joplin, Jimi Hendrix, the Grateful Dead. And he has the place locked down. If you want to put on a show in the Bay Area, you want Bill Graham because he can bring the biggest and the best. And he had a thing called the Day on the Green. And the Day on the Green is just a day long of, it could be in San Francisco at Golden Gate Park, outdoor place or an indoor place. Some of the shows that he put on, I mean, the first Day on the Green was Peter Frampton, Fleetwood Mac, and Gary Wright. I would totally love that show.
Love Fleetwood Mac.
I fucking love them. I mean, Marvin Gaye, The Temptations, Harold Melvin. I mean, he had that was a jazz festival that was like a Day on the Green. Beach Boys, Linda Ronstadt, Loggins and Messina. I'd love to see that.
Yep.
The Who and the Grateful Dead played together. I cannot imagine that. My brain is like bending. So in July 23rd and 24th, 1977, Led Zeppelin is going to do a show in Oakland. And it's a Day on the Green, so it's an all-day festival. They do them all the time now, Lollapalooza, but it was kind of a big deal then. And the opening acts were Rick Derringer, Rock and Roll Hoochie Coo, and Judas Priest. Like, I would never put these...
Yeah, had another thing
coming. I love Judas Priest. So the band is backstage, and they're ready to go on. And Peter Green, at this point, they've been on tour for a few months, and... They're getting grouchy, they're getting tired, and they're doing this gig. And Peter Grant all of a sudden like calls Bill Graham before they're going to go on stage and makes him meet him at the office backstage at one of the Winnebagos and says, "You need to bring me cash. You need to bring me $25,000 in cash, or they're not doing your show." And it's like an hour before they're on stage. They're supposed to be on stage. So Bill Graham was not somebody who took orders well. He gave orders. You did not tell Bill Graham what you were going to do. He was going to tell you what you were going to do. And you were hoping he didn't scream in your face when he asked you. Like, that was the whole thing. So he was pissed, but he brought it. And that it creates this icky feeling backstage area. And Bill Graham, one of his things that the artists loved about him is that first of all, he loved musicians. He loved the music. It was his passion. So he always made sure the backstage area was really, really nice. He made sure it was pristine, clean. He made sure they had gourmet foods, not just some lunch meat sitting around, like real decent meals, nice Winnebagos backstage. And they had these beautiful wood carvings of the different bands, and their name was on their Winnebago. Okay. So Peter Grant, they're all there backstage, waiting to go on. And Peter Grant and a bodyguard named John Bindon or Bindon, it's Bindon. They're walking backstage and they're going up a ramp to go to the stage and then go backstage. So they're behind the auditorium and they're going up this ramp. And once again, Peter, G is like 6'5", 300 pounds. So as he's walking up the ramp, Jim Downey, who worked for Bill Graham backstage as a stagehand, says, "Be careful, it's a really steep ramp." And then he just like is doing his thing. Peter was convinced he was making fun of him for being fat, like he was walking awkward up the ramp. And he was just saying, be careful.
Be careful.
It's just really, there's no railings or anything. So you just have to be careful as you're going up the ramp. And that's pissing him off. So he tells John Bynum, he's making fun of me. He's calling me fat. So John Bynum just walks up to Jim, punches him in the face, and knocks him out cold. So they take him to get, healed. And he wakes up and he's like, I'm okay. I'm fine. It's fine. Because you do that. You don't want to make a big deal out of things.
Yeah.
So he gets knocked out and then they treat him and then he wakes up. And then Peter Grant is walking around backstage and he's getting angrier and angrier because he's convinced this guy just called him fat. Jimmy Page is wasted. Bonzo is wasted. The mood is like terrible. The bands are not jiving. Like, Judas Priest and all, they're not all like Rick Derringer. They're not all together. So the feeling is just weird and bad. And basically the crowd is just waiting for Led Zeppelin. That's all they want.
Right.
So Peter Grant's son, who's 11 years old, his name is Warren. He's hanging out backstage and he sees all the Winnebagos and he sees the Led Zeppelin one and he sees the wood carving for Led Zeppelin. And he's jumping up above the door to grab at it because he wants to take it as a souvenir.
Uh-huh.
And Jim Downey comes over. I'm sorry, Jim Mazukis this time comes over. Matt Zorkis. Jim Matt Zorkis, it's a Greek name. He comes over and very politely tells this 11-year-old, You can't take that. This has to stay here. And he says, my daddy is Peter Grant. He says I can have it. I'm going to have this. And he's like, no, kid, we need this
No
here.
Veruca salt.
No Veruca
Leave it.
salt. No, they need this for tomorrow because it's the first day of a 2-day event. And so he's like, no, you can't take this. And the kid's like, yes, I can. Bonzo witnesses this. And he goes over to Peter Green because he's in a shit mood. And he says, guess what? That guy over there just smacked your kid. Peter Green and Jim go over. And he's getting angrier and angrier as he's going over. And he says, I'm going to take your job. You can't talk to my kid right there. I will have your job. And Jim looked at him and didn't know this other guy got whacked in the face. Looks at him and says, you can't have my job. You will not have my job. You take your shit someplace. Like stood up for himself.
Yeah.
Well, that's when Grant puts him in a headlock and starts beating him in the face with his fist filled with rings. He had a ring on every finger and was beating his face with this.
Oh my God.
Richard Cole is outside of this Winnebago holding a steel rod and like in his hand, like whacking his hand to like scare people off while this person is being beaten the shit out of.
Jesus.
This man has enough to say, Bill, come help me. Because he's getting the shit kicked out of these two maniacs. Yes. So Bill comes in and they eventually grab him, they get him out of there, and they get this guy to the hospital and they call the police. And the band goes on stage and they do their thing. But what happened was that when the Peter didn't want Bill Graham to call the police. He didn't want the police involved. So this guy's in the hospital, and they did call the police because you have to call the police. But they came
also
over.
Stop beating up people if you don't want the police called.
Yeah,
don't assault people.
So Grant, Cole, Bonham, and Bindon, they're all arrested. But they are when they get back to their hotel after the show, the four of them are arrested, and they don't want this kind of shit out in the press. So they're calling Bill Graham and saying, "Hey, they arrested us. You got to help us." And Bill Graham's like, "Fuck you. You hurt my band." And they're like, "No, fuck you. You don't take care of this. We're not going to play tomorrow." And it's a 2-day event. So Bill Graham goes to the hospital and he talks it over with the guy. And the guy's like, they got beat up and he's saying, "Dude, just sign whatever they want you to sign. It's not worth it. They're going to get away with it, basically. Just don't even." So they sign an NDA, but what they didn't know was that it's not legal to use it. So they eventually did get, had to go to court, and then there was a settlement out of court. But the band was really disgusted. Jimmy Page would later, him and Robert Plant were really disgusted by the behavior. And they were now thinking, we needed this guy as our manager for a while because we really needed someone who knew what they were doing to get us the best deals, scare the shit out of everybody. But look what's happening now. His ego is run amok. His kid is getting us into trouble. Yeah. Like, this is some bullshit.
Yeah. It's one thing to have, groupies fucking sharks, but we draw the line at beating dudes up.
I mean, beating people unconscious is just not okay. And
it is not okay.
They were starting fights backstage with all these different places. So, by the way, John Bindon, so he gets fired and they send him back to England. And then 1 year later, he gets in a fight with John Dark, who's a London gangster, and it's outside of this club. And Dark is stabbed 9 times, which results in his death. Bindon flees to Dublin, and gets he was in a knife fight with this guy. He gets his wounds treated. And he's arrested and he's brought back, and they try to prosecute him. And they called it a $10,000 contract hit. And the fight was just a cover up for the death. Like the whole thing was not just a heated argument. It was actually a drug deal gone bad.
Oh my God.
And John Biden was supposed to avoid it, but he made it worse. And so now this guy is dead. Now he's saying, that was not the case. We just had an argument and it got out of hand. But I was in fear for my life. I thought he was going to blackmail me.
I was just standing my ground.
I was standing my ground. He thought that this gangster was blackmailing him. And he probably was. for drug money and for cocaine and stuff like that. So Binding goes to trial a year later. And it turns out before he became a bodyguard, he was an actor. And he had a bunch of his actor friends go on stand to judge for his character to say, no, he's a good person. He would never do this. One of them was Bob Hoskins.
What?
One of his good friends was Bob Hoskins, who went on the stand and was such a good character witness that he avoided all prosecution.
Well, Bob Hoskins is a really good actor.
He's a great actor. But this happened in Oakland, and then this happened in London, and then his reputation was shit. And he had a very hard time finding work in the entertainment industry. He winds up dying kind of young. He also, by the way, had a fling with Princess Margaret.
Oh.
Yeah.
I like to imagine him begging Bob Hoskins to testify for him.
Please!
Please testify for me.
Please! Okay. Back to 1977. Okay. So as they leave Oakland, they had that shitty thing happen in Oakland, and now their next gig is at the Louisiana Superdome. It's in the French Quarter in Nolens. And they don't go home. They have a couple of weeks off, but they don't go home to Europe because it was just too far of a flight. So they're staying. Some of the Zeppelins in Long Island, and some of them are in the French Quarter, and they're hanging out. And all of a sudden, Robert Plant gets a call from his wife, and she's saying, "I don't want to worry you, but our son Carrick, who is 5 years old, he's been sick, and he has like this stomach virus, and he can't seem to get rid of it. We're really worried about him." So he was like, "Oh well, keep me informed." And then he goes, and then it was like, he's in the hospital. Like they're trying to figure out what's wrong with him, but your son's in the hospital. You need to get here. And so he's like trying to figure out which plane to take and how to get him there. And then he gets a phone call. His son died.
Oh, that's awful.
He was 5 years old.
So young.
And so
a little baby.
He's just a baby. He was, yeah. And when he was home, he was home. He really, he loved his family.
Did they figure out what was wrong with him?
Stomach virus. It was just, he got sick. And
that's so scary.
I know. So Plant, so Robert Plant's father said, Carrick, he's the grandfather of Carrick. Carrick was the apple of Robert's eye. They idolized one another. And they immediately canceled the tour because he had to go home for the funeral to comfort his wife and be with his daughter, Carmen. So they said, we're going to put the tour on hold. And Bonzo goes with Plant back to England. They fly back together. And he takes him to his son's funeral. They're from different parts of England, and they're from the north, and the other two are from the south. And they said they're just different ways of behaving. But where Plant is from, people cry and they mourn and they get upset when somebody dies. And where the other two were from, Jimmy Page and John Paul Jones, people are much more reserved. So they decided they didn't go to the funeral. And Peter Grant didn't go to the funeral. Bonham did, but nobody else. So that kind of caused this weird rift within the group. I would be pissed. Like, I would not.
Yeah. Be like, where the fuck are you?
Where the fuck are you?
Yeah.
Robert Plant actually got a call from somebody. It was just before Robert Plant got a call from someone who said, look what you did. Because you messed with Peter Green, your son's dead. So there was, yeah.
What the fuck?
Yeah. It was just fucked up and awful. So
that is awful.
Robert Plant later said to Rolling Stone, I lost my boy. I didn't want to be in Led Zeppelin. I wanted to be with my family. He also claims he quit all of his chemical habits. Well, I don't know about that. But he said, the most important for me right now is my family. And I found it difficult to be all the things to all the people that meant a lot to me. Meaning he realized he didn't want to be the rock star anymore. Like it humbled him to the point, like he was like, I'm really not living my life fully. And I should have been there.
Yeah.
And He said it was the darkest time of his life, and he said it was Bonzo
I
who.
can't even imagine. I can't imagine
I mean, the
the
kid,
pain of losing your child.
a 5-year-old,
I don't.
and you're in another country. Like, you got to get to an airport to get where he is, and you're getting all these calls, and
Yeah.
it's just escalating and escalating.
Someone described, like, when you have a child, it's like your heart is just like out walking around in the world
Right.
unprotected, and you're like so vulnerable. And I can't even imagine like what it would be like.
Yeah.
It would change you.
Once again, this is also a thing that people claim that believe there's a curse on Led Zeppelin. Like, that's part of the curse that would happen. I know. There's no curse,
Right.
people. It's just life is really shitty sometimes.
Yeah.
And it's very unfair and super shitty sometimes. He was thinking of becoming a teacher. He didn't even want to be in the music business anymore. So he needed some time. And he said that the big change for him was, until then, he was in the thrall of Jimmy Page when they started Led Zeppelin, because Jimmy Page was the star, and
Right.
Jimmy Page was a big star on the road. He was famous too, but it was kind of like Jimmy Page's band. And for Robert, especially because Jimmy didn't go to the funeral, Jimmy wasn't there for him, it kind of cooled things off between them. And that's when Robert kind of like, he just had more, that's when Robert became more centered in the band, and he had more power. And he also just gave more boundaries. Like, I will do this, I will not do that. And they listened to him.
Mm-hmm.
So they go back on the road, and they put out another album and another album. But, it's tough. I mean, they've been dealt some really horrible things. In September of 1980, the band didn't tour for a couple of years in America. It was like, in 1980 September, John Bonham was picked up by his assistant Rex King to go to rehearsals for a tour that was going to happen in October. So they were going to go on tour in October of 1980 in America. It was their first time since 1977. He asked to stop for breakfast before they were heading. He and his assistant, they were heading to a rehearsal. So at their breakfast, he drank 4 quadruple vodka quadruple vodka screwdrivers. That's 16 shots between 400 and 560 milliliters.
I don't know how people function like that.
That was his breakfast, 16 shots. And it was, he then continued to drink during the rehearsals. The band stopped rehearsing pretty late in the evening, and that's when he went to Jimmy Page's house. And he was staying in a guest room because he was so wasted he couldn't go home.
Right.
He fell asleep a little after midnight on September 25th, and they placed him on his bed, and they placed him on his side.
Yes.
He was found the next morning by their new tour manager, Benji. It was like brand new too. Like, welcome to the gig, dude. And he was found in the bed unresponsive in the next afternoon. And there was vomit by his head.
Yeah.
And it turns out he was dead. He died. He was 32 years old.
So young.
At the inquest, it showed that within 24 hours, John Bonham consumed 40 shots of 40% vodka, after which he vomited and choked, which is called pulmonary aspiration. And it's an accidental death.
He rolled on his back or something, right? Yeah. That's a lot of fucking booze.
Well, he was also getting over heroin. He had developed a heroin addiction.
Jesus.
So he was using alcohol to take the place of the heroin. And sometimes, because heroin's a depressive, sometimes people do that. They. His remains were cremated and his ashes were interred. And the band basically decided that they're going to disband. They're like, there's no way we can have Led Zeppelin without Bonzo. Bonzo is like, we can't call it Led Zeppelin. This isn't the New Yardbirds. Like, we can't.
Right.
This is a whole other thing. So they split up. and they've formed back together at Live Aid. They were they've toured with like other. I think they toured once with John Paul Jones. They don't really include him in a lot of things. He's kind of forgotten about. Hi, I'm the bass player.
He's like,
yeah. They occasionally remember, and he gets his feelings hurt because he wants to be a part of things.
Right.
But they occasionally get together and do stuff, but it's not nearly the way it was. Jimmy Page does his own thing now. He's been in The Firm. He was at the Black Crowes for a little while. He does things.
Yeah.
John Paul Jones does things every once in a while. He didn't form any other bands. He just, performs every once in a while. Robert Plant started a solo career and became very successful.
I remember that. That was like early 80s because it was like MTV.
Yep.
He was one of the few people that had music videos, right? So I remember seeing his videos. And then did Page and Plant tour together?
They've toured together. Page and Plant have toured together. And they've played Led Zeppelin. I mean, and John Bonham's son, Jason Bonham, is a fantastic drummer, and he's been with a bunch of bands. But he was a kid. He was a little kid when his dad died.
Yeah.
So the Led Zeppelin, in 1995, they're in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Every year, there's like, who's the best drummer of all time? And it's usually Bonham. And when it's not, people freak the fuck out. It's like, Neil Peart and The Who, Keith Moon. And then Bonham. Like it's just the way it is.
Is Keith Moon the drummer that's in Decade Under the Influence that's drinking in the pool and he's like just dumping booze?
No, that's Chris Watt. He's from Wasp.
Okay.
That's Chris from Wasp. That's from the heavy metal one. No, that's one about heavy metal in the 80s.
Oh, okay.
That's Chris. I love that scene. He's it's pathetic, but it's like it's but he's an alcoholic.
It's so memorable. I mean, here I remember it, and I for some reason
Decline of Western Civilization Part 2.
That's what I'm thinking of.
Penelope Ferris.
Not under the Decade Under the Influence is something different.
No, it's Chris from Wasp, and he's in a pool, and he's wearing his leather pants and a vest, and he's talking to the camera, and his mother is sitting in a chair next to the pool. And he's just talking about how much he hates himself and that he drinks to forget everything.
Yeah, and he's just like dumping booze down his throat. Yeah, it's...
Unfortunately, there's that kind of drinking, that binge drinking and that continual drinking does exist. And, it's very hard to be a rock star. I mean, I know it sounds like the greatest thing in the world, but you're under tremendous pressure.
I imagine,
You have a very short lifespan. Most bands last maybe 2 or 3 years if you're lucky.
Right.
It's a tough way. It's physically very trying on your body, and it's a tough road. But if you're successful, you could be set for life. But it's not for everybody.
That's true.
But those are the creepy things that are around Led Zeppelin. I hope they were creepy enough for you, Sonia.
Yeah, you had me at Mud Shark. Like it's pretty creepy. I had not heard most of those stories, so I feel like I would remember a shark story like that, but maybe my friends will text me later and be like, we totally talked about that, Sonia, but I don't remember. Good job, my friend.
Thank you, friend.
Would you like to hear about someone who's not a creep?
Yes, please.
Okay. Do you know who Hosier is?
Yeah, of course. He's Irish.
Yes. So y'all probably know him. He did some songs called Take Me to Church, and he had one out, I think last year called Too Sweet I really, really liked. He is not a creep. So I figured this is a good one. He was born Andrew John Hosier Byrne, March 17th. His birthday's coming up.
St. Patrick's Day.
1990. Because we're old.
Very fucking old.
Born in Bray, County Wicklow, Ireland.
Mm-hmm.
Just some non-creepy thing. First of all, he's very handsome.
He's gorgeous.
So handsome. So my friend, John and Chris, Chris went and saw him in concert, and he said it was a whole audience of just people swooning, male or female, like just like, like, oh,
Take
Frankie.
me to church. Oh, Frankie.
Yeah, they're all just like, yeah, and then everyone lays
lays the
eggs.
eggs that like
Yes. He said it was like unreal. So he has been since 2016. He participated in the Home Sweet Home movement in Ireland, which is getting the Irish government to take some sort of action on homelessness in Ireland. He is someone who was actually raised Quaker and went to Catholic school, but he's actually now he's like agnostic, and he's a very outspoken critic about like the Catholic Church and its views on sexual orientation and how it treats victims of sexual abuse.
Yes. I'm against
things.
those things. I think it's good that he's
against those things. He has been very vocal in his support of abortion rights in Ireland. He did a protest song in 2019 called Jackboot Jump, and when he released the single, sorry everyone, I am on cold meds. He donated all the proceeds to the NAACP and Black Lives Matter.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. In March 2023, he performed at the Love Rising benefit concert in Nashville. He was trying to show support for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender plus community. It was a whole benefit concert. He's definitely expressed his pro-Palestine stuff, wanting a ceasefire in Gaza, which would be, boy, that would be nice. We've talked about this in a few bonus episodes, the idea that like art is political.
Yes.
Even art that doesn't seem political is political.
And sports, but yeah, they both are. Yeah.
And he is a big believer in that sort of thing. And he says that even the personal is political. Like basically everything is political, and he talks about that, and he's not afraid to talk about like controversial subjects and events. He seems to do it very thoughtfully in the interviews that I've seen. He's very politically minded, but not in an obnoxious way. Although I don't know if there is an obnoxious way to do it. Maybe there is. I don't know, but
we could find it.
We could find it. So if you've seen the Take Me to Church music video, it's actually about like two men in a same-sex relationship, which of course got like everybody all worked up in a lather, but and he said like he wanted to shine a light on like the violent crimes that happen against gay men in Russia in particular, is why that video is the way it is. He did a song called Cherry Wine that was about domestic violence. He donated all the proceeds from that single to domestic abuse charities all around the world. He did another song called Nina Cried Power, and it's about like Nina Simone, but he also talks about like Bob Dylan and Mavis Staples, and he also featured a lot of Irish activists in the music video for that. He's got a lot to say. What was the last one? Oh, he also like identifies himself as a feminist, which
that's a red flag. I mean,
I'm like,
so does Justin Baldoni. I mean, that's one thing. Like, okay, but my arm is extended. I hope you are.
Yeah, I hope you are. But he has definitely said things like that in interviews. He seems to be putting his money where his mouth is.
That's a good thing.
So that's a good thing. He also did another song that's called Swan Upon Leda. And he says like that song is also about like the systematic oppression of women, like, and also, but his voice is so dreamy.
He's a beautiful voice. And he's gorgeous.
A beautiful voice.
And catchy lyrics.
And so catchy. Like, and these songs, they sound very like preachy.
Mm-hmm.
Like when I talk about them, but then you listen to them and they don't sound that way. I really, really like him, and I think he's not a creep. I hope he stays that way. Like,
yes.
We don't want to curse our non-creeps. So that is our non-creep.
He's not into Aleister Crowley though, right? He's okay.
I mean, as far as I know, but
I'm going to look up Jimmy Page's girlfriend. Girlfriend age. Everybody wants to know that. She's 35. They've been together for 10 years.
oh my God. I'm sure they have so much in common. They both like soup. They both like talking and not talking.
She was born in 1989, Sonia. My God. Yeah. I'm going to say this. Jimmy Page could have it.
Young Jimmy Page could have it.
Also, I didn't mention this. Jimmy Page had a very, he's very slim, as you could see when you see pictures of him.
Yeah.
His favorite weight that he was always going for, 125 pounds. He's almost 6 feet tall.
Oh my God. That is really
So he's
fit.
like really, yeah. He got like scary
Damn.
skinny when he was on the road. But that's all cocaine too. Like it's
a hell of a drug.
Cocaine's a hell of a drug, and she's real pretty too. She's a redhead.
Of course she is.
I know. She's a poet, and her name is Scarlett Sabet. I think he has a daughter named Scarlett too. Uh-oh. Partner since 2014. Let me just see the partner, spouse, children. Yeah, he has a daughter named Scarlett. He has 6 kids. 5 kids.
That's kind of weird.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's the show, everybody.
Yes.
We went on a journey there.
A musical journey.
It was. I hope you all enjoyed it. We like to rock and roll all night and party every day here at What a Creep. We also, if you like the sound of our voices, we love movies and we love talking about movies, and we co-host a show called Dorking Out where we dork out about movies. What did we talk about last time?
Double Jeopardy.
So good. That was so much fun to talk about.
We love talking about 90s thrillers, and that was a fun one with Ashley Judd and Tommy Lee Jones.
Tommy Lee Jones.
We are taking the weekend off originally because it's F This Movie Fest, and it's going to be all day Saturday, and we really just want to participate in that. If you haven't ever heard of it, you could go to their website and look it up. It's an online film festival where we all start a movie at the same time, and
we go on Blue Sky, and we're gonna
chat through it.
Trade quips.
Yes, it's super, super fun. Also, my voice is probably going to go away, so we wouldn't have been able to record anyway.
Yeah.
But I will re-release one of our Gene Hackman episodes. So if you have thoughts and feelings, please share in our What a Creep group. And we have Birdcage, we have The French Connection, and we have
Quick and the
Dead, which I'm leaning towards The Quick and the Dead, but
good movie. But the Birdcage was pretty. They're all good.
Yeah. They're all good.
But we're always looking for suggestions for movies to cover. So check us out and let us know if you have any ideas of what we should cover for you. We're always looking for suggestions for creeps and for non-creeps. Yeah. All those places I mentioned at the top of the show, social media-wise. We love it when you use the Annie Potts gift. We got one from Ghostbusters when you're giving us ideas. Or you can be clever and pick something else. Or you don't have to go through all that rigmarole. You could just send us an email. Why don't you do a thing about this and that? And I say, okay. And I put it on the list.
There you go.
Our email, once again, is whatacreeppodcast@gmail.com. If you'd like some stickers, just send us your address there. We'll drop them in the mail for you as soon as I get a batch. Sonia, where can they find you?
You can find me at thesoniashow.com and The Sonia Show on Blue Sky and Threads and Instagram and the TikTok. Where can people find you, my friend?
You can find me at brooklynfitchick.com. I'm at Brooklyn Fit Chick for Threads and Instagram. I'm at Brooklyn Margo for TikTok and Blue Sky. And I'm at my YouTube. I'm at my name, Margo Donahue. Okay, everybody. Thank you so much for listening. Take out your Bic lighters. Woo! We did it! Now go home. Go to the parking lot. Go home. You got to go home now. I'm like Tracy Ullman.
Here.
Don't have to go home, but you can't stay here.
Stay here.
Everybody, in the meantime, be safe, be kind. Just don't be a creep.
Be a creep.
Thank you for listening to us talk about creeps. You can follow us at What a Creep Podcast on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
But don't follow us too closely.
You can email us your creepy stories at whatacreeppodcast@gmail.com.
But please keep your dick pics to yourself.